Lesson 11, bad, wrong and evil. Okay, here's the dictionary term. If you look up bad, this is what you'll find. This in the middle here, this is not a T, it's an L with a line through it. Okay, so it's a diagonal line. If you're typing, the T would have a straight line. I know, like, my handwriting's pretty bad, but if you have an L and then a diagonal line through it, this is what you use to get the W sound. If you remember when we looked right back at the beginning about uniwersalne, we'd said there's no V in Polish. They use W as the letter V to get the V sound. So what do you use to get the W sound? This. Okay, so let's just hear it.
Zły. Zły. Zły.
Great. Now, it just comes along because it's a very useful phrase. If we think this is w, and the was what we used to get w was what we used to get the sound. It's the like in vocal. Okay, so English word for vocal, got a C in the middle. If it sounds like a K, it is a K. So that's why we've got vocal here. Let's just hear it.
Wokal. Wokal.
Alright, and the Polish word for vocal tends to apply to singing voice more than most things. Okay, you will find it other uses, but it tends to apply to singing voice. So if you're like walking down the street and you hear one of those buskers who really can't sing and really shouldn't be busking, you can say to złe vocal. It's a bad singing voice. Okay, so that's just a useful one to add in there. Okay, let's take a closer look at the word for this word for bad.
Zły. Zły.
Right, so just like dobre, we've got our three forms, one that ends in a, one that ends in e, like an elephant, and our original form, the one you find in the dictionary. So I'll leave those on the screen because it's new and you need them as memory joggers. So it's a bad bank. It's a bad bank. No need for yes now because we're just saying the statement. We've got the default, so it's a bad bank.
To zły bank. To zły bank.
And we'll agree with somebody else. Yes, it's a bad bistro. Yes, it's a bad bistro.
Tak, to złe bistro. Tak, to złe bistro.
No, it's not a bad museum. No, it's not a bad museum.
Nie, to nie jest złe muzeum. Nie, to nie jest złe muzeum.
Again, there, remember that museum is an exception. Although it doesn't end in E or O, it is neuter. Okay. No, it's not bad coffee. No, it's not bad coffee. And remember, coffee, we've got this Java beans, Java, what rhymes with Java? No, it's not bad coffee.
Nie, to nie jest zła kawa. Nie, to nie jest zła kawa.
Alright, let's use some of our shun words because we've got buckets and buckets of shun words to use. So let's try saying it's a bad ambition. And again, if this is your first time through, you might want to pause this for a minute while you just go through the working out how to transfer ambition from English into Polish. And then once you've done that, looking at the last letter to identify the gender. So, it's a bad ambition.
To zła ambicja. To zła ambicja.
How about saying, no, it's not a bad situation? No, it's not a bad situation.
Nie, to nie jest zła sytuacja. Nie, to nie jest zła sytuacja.
Tell someone they're not making the right choice. It's a bad option. It's a bad option.
To zła opcja. To zła opcja.
And let's agree with someone that it is a bad definition. Yes, it's a bad definition. Yes, it's a bad definition.
Tak, to zła definicja. Tak, to zła definicja.
Right, one final point we must remember about this word is that it actually has multiple meanings. It can mean bad, it can mean wrong, and it can mean evil. Okay, so there are multiple uses of the word, and it will always just depend on the context of what's going on. So there we say, it's a bad bank. So we know that we're talking about bad. We might be talking about evil, yeah, we might, big banks, but we know it's bad. We're not talking about it's a wrong bank. That doesn't make sense. However, if someone was to come downstairs with the wrong bag, we might say that they've got the wrong bag. We're using this to get the wrong bag. It's not a bad bag. It's bad because it's wrong. It's not an evil bag, but because of the context, we know what we're talking about. You've got the wrong bag. Okay, let's summarise. So I would recommend thinking up your own bad things, other bad wines, coffee, products. A lot of the words that we've covered so far that you're remembering, go back through those and call them bad. And try, just for practicing out, to say things like, yes, it is bad. Yes, it is a bad product. No, it isn't a bad product. Just try practicing those through in your mind, or practice them out loud if you can. If you're doing more complicated sentences, then I'd recommend using a paper and pen first. So if you wanted to say, if you were talking about, for example, how a telephone was set up, you might want to say it's a bad configuration. The telephone was configured badly. It's a bad configuration. Now for that you might want to stop and hold on for a second, unless you're a very visual person, and do that with paper and pen. To take off the shun, to think about the Polish pronunciation, like for example that it should start with a K, because if it sounds like a K, it is a K. And then once you've finished doing that flip, that language transfer, then you can think about the word bad and think about how that should end, depending on what configuration the Polish configuration ends in. Spot the gender. So it's really more about thinking, spending some time and thinking about what you know, not what you've learned. Don't try and think, oh, I remember that and I'm going to just keep trying to remember that. Try thinking it. And the more you think it, the more you will naturally remember it, rather than it just being something you remembered because you repeated it a million times.